And welcome to the Artaxis presentations for National Clay Week. There are 24 artists from 16 countries, and Artaxis is providing 12 hours of live streaming video in conjunction with National Clay Week. I'm Linda Arbuckle. I'm an artist in Florida in the United States, and I'm one of the artists participating in the event today. If you have any questions, please post them in the comment and follow until the end of the event, which will be 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time today. The schedule for the rest of the day can be found at artaxis.org/conversations. I want to thank my host this evening, the Micanopy Library branch of the Alachua County Library. I live in a rural location and my home internet is unfortunately not up to doing this. So the library graciously gave me space. I'm a big supporter and promoter of my local library. And I'd like to thank Brian Harper and the board members at Artaxis who give a tremendous amount of time, energy, and heart to make this organization go. And it adds so much to our community and is such a vital conduit for connecting us to each other. So thank you so much for doing this. It's greatly appreciated. I want to thank the people who submitted questions, and I have those with me here. Just a second. There were some very interesting questions. Lauren Sandler asked, she said, as an artist and an educator, I consider how clay as a cultural material provides opportunity to engage in dialogue around content and contemporary and historic context. How do you negotiate the use of cultural signifiers and the meanings they convey, especially as power and perspective shift through time and place? So that's a pretty big question. I know that I have bumped into people who are surprised that there is content in functional pottery, and I will say there certainly is, that a great many things will hold liquid for you, but a cup made by an artist who wants to communicate something has a particular set of choices that shape your experience and give clues to the visitor about what's going on. I think that basic design really helps. There are all those things that you learn about positioning things and color and space and perspective and scale that make a difference. And I also think that there are things that are universal, like for everyone. The sky is blue, the sun is yellow, blood and fire are red, so certain things are perceived by everyone in a similar way. And then there are a lot of things that are cultural and culturally located. So the color for royalty might be different in different cultures, or the funerary color might be different. Or ideas about prestige and who's allowed to use what and sumptuary rules are different from time and place. So we don't always have access to those things. It would help us if we did, but we have to do the best we can. We still get a tremendous amount from work from other cultures, and I think we intuit a lot. Can we actually know what it specifically meant? Maybe not. But I think that we can get a pretty good feel for a lot of the things that they're trying to do. I would suggest people who are interested take a look at something like, this is a book about semiotics, which is the study of signifiers and symbols in communication. And this is a really great picture book. It's called This Means This, This Means That, A User's Guide to Semiotics. And it's by Sean Hall, spelled A-N. And he basically gives you a picture and then gives you a couple of paragraphs of interpretation about what he thinks is going on in the picture. And I think if you're looking to get a hook on signifiers, that would be a really useful thing for you to look at. in addition to looking at those kinds of things, I think it helps if you have other people to talk to. I think that you have to question your own perspective and realize that people see things in different ways. And one of the reasons I think people gain a tremendous amount from going to formal schooling for art is that you have a set-up community that very often stays with you for several years. And you get to have discussions with these people, and you understand their background, and you get to focus on how they see things either similarly or different than you. And you start to understand how your audience might be seeing your work, or at least how an educated audience that's visually literate might be seeing your work, and what kind of cues you can leave for those people. In my own work, I grew up in a working class neighborhood outside of Cleveland, Ohio, and it was a very pragmatic community. People were very proud of their accomplishments and what they had, but they had a tendency to save the best for later, and that later never seemed to come. So I grew up wanting indulgence in daily life. Not extravagance necessarily, but I wanted things that I enjoyed in my personal life. And for me, in my work, I brought a couple of examples here with me. One of the things that I enjoy a lot is color. And I think that a lot of color, rich color, variety in color is for me very indulgent. And I think it is for a lot of people who are viewers and users of this work. The idea that anyone would have a handmade, hand-painted cup in the 21st century is an indulgent idea. Functional pottery has a great deal to say, and I feel it's very valuable, but it's not a necessity of life. It contributes to life, and it certainly makes you have a richer life and understand a great deal about life and the value of the individual and the value of individual experience. But it takes time. I get paid probably less for making these than my mechanic gets paid for fixing my car. But I think that I value this, and my sense of indulgence from being able to make and have this is really important to me. In terms of other signifiers, when I was younger, most of my work had floral motifs, and it seemed like it was always spring or summer, and things were growing from the bottom up and into blooms, and there was a profusion of blooming flowers. And I realized at one point that I personally was not having spring or summer in my life, that it was maybe fall, maybe edging toward late fall. And I thought about changing some of the subject matter and colors in my work to signify that I was thinking about fall. Fall, in terms of a season, is like 3/4 of the year is gone, it's shot. And winter is coming, to cop a phrase from Game of Thrones. But fall is a great time of year. I grew up in Ohio, where fall color is really wonderful. It's lush, it's extravagant, and it's not very long lasting, but it's really something. And I started thinking about fall as a time of year, and how as a person you get the fruits of your labors after you reach a certain age. And so I started putting, instead of flowers, I started putting fruit on a lot of my work, thinking about that, wanting to have the fruits of my labors, feeling like I was getting the fruits of my labors, and that it was hard won and I should enjoy it. So the motifs have changed. Not that I don't on occasion do flowers, I do, but I also do things that are not floral. And my palette changed. So not only do I have reds and oranges and yellows of fall, I started making more things gray and thinking about gray as, personally graying as an idea that these leaves are maybe ghost leaves or spirit leaves, or that these leaves are passing away from being vibrant, vital, growing things to being the idea of leaves, but fruit is what the big thing is right now. So I do think about all those kinds of signifiers. I have a teapot, and you hold on to it back here, you hold on to the red handle, which I love warm color. I also love cool color. I love blues and greens as well, especially greens. But for a long time, we couldn't make this kind of red in ceramics. And once people started making inclusion stains so that we could have lipstick red at any temperature, all sorts of things became possible. When I was initially a student, the best we could do without using toxic cadmium colors that burned out at 06 was crimson mason stain, which was kind of a cranberry color. So once I had the ability to use lipstick red, I was pretty excited about it. And to make a teapot where I could hold on to the red part, which was exciting. I have a big full body, and I wanted it to be generous. I want to get a lot of fruit. I want lots of wonderful things, happiness, plenty. And then the leaves are in the back, the fruit's toward the front. All the good things are going to pour out the spout. Like this fruit is going to get concentrated and come out the spout. But the spout is black. You know, it's all coming out toward the end. And some of that is a little, you know, makes people a little wistful, makes me a little wistful, but it's also a great thing that you can go from starting with leaves that you can hold on to for this exciting ride, and then all the good fruit's going to pour out the front. So those are some of the things I think about in terms of signifiers. I also think that knowing design is pretty important. I went to school, initially I went to school as a zoology major, and then I found out what they did to animals in laboratory work and decided I was emotionally ill-equipped for that kind of profession. So I discovered ceramics through needing a work-study job and not typing. In high school, my mother told me I should type. It was a good job school for a girl, and that was like the kiss of death. I was never going to take typing. I did take typing, and I do type well now, but at that point, it was not something I was excited about. So I looked for a work-study job that didn't involve typing, and the only thing I could find was a job with the city recreation department, and I was the assistant for a woman who taught the greenware casting program. So she asked me if I knew anything about ceramics, and I said, no, but I can learn. And she said, okay. And she showed me how to cast greenware, and I helped people make those big ceramic Christmas trees with the light bulb up underneath and the plastic lights on the end of the branches. I helped people make those. And that was my initial introduction to ceramics. I was so excited that it was this material that you could customize and you could fire it, and it became this real object that you could have. You could personalize it. It was such a chameleon material, and it endured. I grew up sewing, and I think my love of color comes from sewing, but the more you love something in sewing, when you make yourself clothing, the faster it wears out and it goes away. With ceramics, unless you drop it, it's yours for life. So I was really excited about what ceramics could do and wanting this kind of lusciousness and indulgence. This kind of dovetails with another question. Let me find the name of the person. Where I was going with that was that I went to Cleveland Institute of Art after dropping out of Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, and a zoology major. And I had a 5-year foundation program that included 2 years of design, and I'm so thankful for that. So I think design is a very good place to investigate how to signify. It's one of the ways that you get your information across. Things that might be helpful. I brought my little favorite book. This is called Design Language, and it's by a man named Tim McCrate, who's a metalsmith. And he's written this little dictionary of design terms. And I like to think about those. Any basic design book can be really helpful. There's a book by Brent Brolin called The Designer's Eye. And he photoshops architectural works and changes them. And then he gives you a couple sentences at the bottom of the work that says, see how when you change this, it does that, and you notice this. those are ways that you can increase your visual sensitivity if figuring out how to signify is something that's important to you and you're interested in it. There was a question from Brian Harper, who said, a few years ago when we were both at Aramont, you shared with me your collection of historical ceramic images. I'm wondering how historic research has affected your work over the years. Ceramics is a very humbling but wonderful material. It's not hard to walk into a museum and find out that someone has done something more wonderful than anything I can make, and they did it many thousands of years ago with a smidgen of the technology that I have at my disposal. And it's very interesting. I'm very aware that people historically learned often in a workshop situation where they didn't have every material under the sun. They had whatever was a local material, whatever the people in the workshop were using, and they didn't sit down and ask themselves, what should I make? You made things that were in a vocabulary that was common to your area and to that workshop. And you did innovate, but the innovations were fine-tuned and small often, instead of going to art school today and you have high fire, you have low fire, you have mid-range, you can do oxidation, you can do reduction, you can throw, you can hand build, you can cast, you can ram press, you can 3D print. And you can cherry pick from all these different ideas and times and philosophies and materials, and it's up to you to figure out where your voice is and what's worth making. So I think that historic ceramics has made me really aware of how we're trained. We're trained as problem solvers. We're trained as interpreters in a very deep way today. On the other hand, I think sometimes we lack the skill and the nuance and the refinement that some of the historic people had. If you put me down in a museum, the first thing I head to is the old work. I love looking at old work. Like, I might start at the Renaissance, but very often even older than that. And I see work that inspires me and humbles me and speaks to me in deeply moving ways. So, yeah, historic work is really still a lodestone for me. Somebody asked, an anonymous person asked me about the subversive nature of making pottery in the 21st century, which is something I've said. And then another question that I think overlaps that, Adam Welsh asked, can you talk about the relationship of pottery, making and using, and the humanizing effect it has on the maker and the user? One of the reasons I think that making pottery is a subversive activity, when you have something that's an art object, like a big A art object, it demands contemplation. And usually there's a space around it. It's on a pedestal, it's on a riser, or it's in a cleared space in a museum, sitting on the floor. And the idea is to separate it from daily life and to give you a moment to really look at that and reflect and think about the artist's ideas. Functional pottery is right down there in the trenches in life. Sometimes cups make it to a display shelf. A lot of people who love cups have display shelves, and I do have some display shelves throughout the house, but my favorite cups are in the kitchen cupboard. And they're the ones that I take out. They're the ones that I use. They're the ones that I have experience with. And I think as an artist, it's pretty subversive to be shooting for occupying somebody's daily life and getting my values into their daily life, living with them. Not just like when they have time, they go think about it. I live with them. I might even go to work with them. They might, take their coffee somewhere and take the cup. And so my values about, not only about indulgence and times in life as seasons and the ephemerality of life as shown by using plant materials, which are ephemeral, and seasons cycle around and they don't stay the same. Everything changes. Not only does that go into the cupboard and into someone's life, but it takes a long time to learn how to do pottery. The learning curve is pretty steep, and I don't think you can expect a lot right away. It takes a while to mature. You spend time honing your skills. Once you get the skills, then you look around and there's all this vocabulary, and you work on different vocabularies, and then you start to decide, well, what do you want to say? You know, what would you like to speak about? And so it's a pretty phenomenal thing to get someone to buy into the value of putting that much time and energy into a person, not into distributed technology, but a person. You know, I have distributed technology. Whoever designed this mouse, it can be produced without him now. If he dies, she dies, Microsoft can still make this mouse, no problem. When I go, this goes. I have invested my learning, my time, my energy in what I know as an individual and the uniqueness of that. That's a very strong human value to me. To put your eggs in the basket of individual experience and the value of a person using this and having an experience that's different than using a manufactured object, perhaps. And so I do feel that it's subversive for me to want to speak about those things, and maybe not very upfront. Maybe it's all subconscious. Maybe it's all in the background. But to get into somebody's life and come to the table where people have dinner, to be the dish that somebody takes to the potluck, to have that morning coffee in the newspaper, and to not be an anonymous cup from the dollar store, to be a cup that you actually see, hopefully, every time you use it. I go to the cupboard and look at the cups I have, and I make a choice. I see those cups every day, and I think if I had a stamped out cup from the dollar store, I'd just pick one and whatever. One is the same as the other. And it's about me wanting to have an experience in my life and wanting to have an observed life. And it's pretty powerful to be able to speak about that and to recruit people to be on that kind of a team with me. Oh, let's see, other questions. Someone asked, would I be wrong if I said your work has a certain femininity, and do you have any opinions on gender differences in art, especially ceramics, in its history or current state? I think that it's now allowable for people to make feminine work, and I don't think my work is particularly feminine. But I think that there are people like Kristen Kiefer who makes work that is more scrolly, corset-like, more delicately embellished, and I think that her work has talked about that feminine aesthetic, color sensibilities. And at one point, you know, if you were a woman in ceramics, you had to run with the boys. You know, you had to be just as forthright in your work as the men, and to use similar subject matter, materials. And there are a lot of people who are making work that has a much more feminine aesthetic. That said, there are also men that I think make work that I suppose you could say is feminine in a very good and positive way. I think some of Peter Biesecker's earlier works, some of his fluted bowls and his stacked bowl sets are really beautiful. I mean, it's not considered manly to be concerned about beauty. So I would like to see people of all genders to be able to be more fluid in their choices. And I think that I see things like Sevres porcelain as having kind of a feminine cast to it, but it's really just decorative, frilly And it was court work, so I think the prince liked it as much as the princess, the king liked it as much as the queen. It was about wealth and status. So I don't know about some of those labels. People are now, though, much more open to artists that are usually women talking about things that are a focus of women in their work. And I'm really excited about seeing that. Eric Cow wanted to know what the most exciting event I experienced in the past 3 years was that made me feel positive about being an artist. I feel a little guilty saying this, but in December 2015, I was 65, and I retired from university teaching. And that was a pretty exciting event. Not that I didn't like teaching. I really got a lot from teaching. I got a whole lot more than I gave, and I met fabulous people. I got to see them develop. It was really, really exciting. But it was also demanding of my time in a lot of different directions. And one of the things that I'm looking forward to soon is going back to my studio and being able to make work that might not work out, to make more speculative work, to be a student, to ask questions I don't know the answer to, and to not feel that I need to make product, that I need to make successful work because I have a show coming up, or I need to polish my reputation because it would draw students to the school, and people want to know what I know so that they know whether they should come to study with me. So I'm very grateful for my career, but retirement really rocks. I'm about to have my hands fixed tomorrow. I'm having my right hand fixed. So I'm going to be out of studio yet longer for another couple months, but I should be back by the beginning of the year. I'm almost out of time, and I have so enjoyed this. It's a little bit of a monologue, and I wish that I was better at doing dialogue with this, but I would like to thank you all for joining me and to continue watching throughout the rest of the evening on the Artaxis Facebook page, and visit artaxis.org to learn more about the over 500 artists who have work posted on the website. The next artist coming up is from the United States, and it's Linda Lighton, who's done some work that's very timely and will be fascinating to talk with. Thank you so much for watching. It's really been my pleasure.